You came back. I wasn't sure you would. After what I told you last time about the carrier thing, about how listening makes you part of it, I figured maybe half of you would click away. Find something safer. Something that doesn't follow you home. But you're here, which means either you don't believe me or you do, and you've decided it doesn't matter. Either way. Some of these came in after episode 1 went out. People heard the first batch and decided it was finally time to talk. Others. I think the stories are finding me now, not the other way around. I want to be up front. These are worse. The first 10 were early symptoms. These feel like the body temperature is rising, like something is paying closer attention. Let's not waste time. Story 1. The Ice Road. Cole and Danny had been hauling freight across ice roads in interior Alaska for 6 winters. That's a specific kind of person. You don't drive a loaded truck across a frozen lake unless you've made a series of life decisions that most people wouldn't. But the money was good, the season was short, and Cole said there was something about it he couldn't explain. A clarity. The ice groaning under you, the white nothing in every direction, the knowledge that the only thing between you and black water was 12 inches of frozen lake. It simplified things. They were running a supply haul across Lake Minchumina in late February. Standard route. They'd done this crossing maybe 40 times between them. 16 miles across, flat, straight, marked with reflectors every quarter a mile. In good conditions, it took about 20 minutes. Conditions were good that night. Clear, cold, no wind. Stars so bright they threw shadows. They were in separate trucks. Cole in front, Danny about 200 yards behind. Radio chatter, the usual complaining about the cold, arguing about where to eat when they got off the ice. Normal. 10 minutes in, Cole noticed something in his headlights. The ice ahead of him looked different. Not thin, different. The surface had a texture to it, a P pattern, like the grain of wood. Swirling lines in the ice that he'd never seen before on any crossing. He mentioned it to Danny. Danny said, "I see it too. Weird freeze pattern. Keep moving." Cole kept moving, but the pattern was getting more defined. The swirls were tighter, more organized, and they were moving, not with the truck independent of it. The lines in the ice were shifting, rotating, rearranging themselves under his headlights like something underneath was stirring. He checked his odometer. They should have been past the midpoint. They weren't. The far shore, which should have been visible by now as a dark line of trees, wasn't there. Just more ice. More white. The reflectors were still there, every quarter of a mile, but the shore wasn't getting any closer. "Danny, you see the far side?" Silence, then, "No, we should be seeing it by now." "How long have we been on the ice?" 32 minutes. 32 minutes. For a 20-minute crossing. Cole looked in his side mirror. Behind Danny's truck, the shore they'd left was gone too. Just ice in every direction. Flat, white, infinite. "Danny, the back shore is gone." "I know. I've been watching it fade for 10 minutes. I didn't want to say anything." They kept driving. What else do you do? You can't stop on an ice road. Stopping means your weight stays in one place and the ice starts to flex. You keep moving. 40 minutes, 50, an hour. The reflectors kept appearing every quarter a mile like breadcrumbs leading nowhere. The ice pattern underneath was fully active now. The swirling lines had organized into concentric circles radiating out from a point directly ahead of them. Like a target. like a drain. At the 1 hour mark, Cole saw something under the ice, not a pattern, a shape, dark, large, moving parallel to his truck, about 30 feet to the right, maybe 6 feet below the surface. Keeping exact pace with him, he slowed down. It slowed down. He sped up. It sped up. He stopped just for a second, just to test it, and it stopped. And when it stopped, the ice under his tires made a sound. Not a groan, a sound like a breath being held. "Danny, something's under the ice on my right side. You see anything?" Danny's voice was different now. Tight, controlled. The voice of someone who's already scared and is managing it. "It's on my left side, Cole. Same thing. It's been there for 20 minutes. Two shapes, flanking them, pacing them, matching their speed, maintaining distance, moving with an intelligence that ice and water don't have." Cole put his foot down. 60 miles an hour on an ice road, suicide speed, the kind of speed that cracks ice and kills people. The shape kept pace, effortlessly, like speed meant nothing to it. Then Danny's radio cut in. Not his voice. Static, and underneath the static, a sound that Cole told me he will hear for the rest of his life, a low, resonant tone, like a whale call, but structured, patterned. It rose and fell in sequences that felt deliberate, felt like language. The tone lasted about 30 seconds. Then Danny's voice came back. "Cole, I can see the shore." Cole looked up. Trees. A dark line of spruce. The far shore, exactly where it should be, maybe a mile ahead. The reflectors leading straight to it. They drove. Fast. The shapes under the ice fell behind or dropped deeper. Cole couldn't tell. The patterns in the surface faded. The ice became normal ice. They hit the shore ramp and drove off onto solid ground and pulled over and sat in their cabs and didn't speak on the radio for 15 minutes. When Danny finally walked over to Cole's truck, his face was gray. Not scared gray. Exhaustion. Gray. The color of a person who's been holding their body rigid for 2 hours. "How long were we on the ice?" Cole asked. Danny checked his watch. 3 hours and 11 minutes. 3 hours. On a 20-minute crossing. They called the dispatch office, reported the delay. The dispatcher said, "You left the east shore at 8:47 p.m. and arrived at the west shore at 9:08 p.m. 21 minutes. What are you talking about?" Cole checked his dash cam. 21 minutes of footage. Normal crossing. No patterns in the ice. No shapes. No missing shoreline. But his odometer showed 187 miles. On a 16-mile crossing. They never hauled across Minchemina again. Danny quit ice roads entirely. Moved to Anchorage, took a warehouse job. Cole kept hauling different lakes, different routes. He says the ice is just ice on other crossings. No patterns, no shapes. But he told me something that keeps me up at night. He said the sound, the tone that came through Danny's radio. He hears it sometimes. In his apartment. In the pipes. Late at night when the building is quiet, there's a vibration in the plumbing that rises and falls in the same pattern. The same structured, almost language rhythm. He asked a plumber about it. The plumber found nothing wrong. Cole lives on the 3rd floor. There are no pipes behind the wall where the sound comes from. That one came to me last month. Cole drove to my P.O. box and left a handwritten letter because he said he didn't trust electronics with it. I don't know what that means exactly, but I respected it. Number 2 is from the bush, way out. The kind of place you can't drive to, can't walk to, can barely fly to. Story 2. The Clinic. Sarah was a traveling nurse, the kind that rotates through bush clinics in remote Alaskan villages on 2-week assignments. You fly in, you run the clinic, you fly out. The villages are small, 30, 60, sometimes 100 people. You're the only medical provider for hundreds of miles. It's isolating, it's intense, and Sarah had been doing it for 4 years because she was good at it and because she liked the work in a way she couldn't explain to people who hadn't done it. February 2023. She flew into a village on the Kuskokwim River. She'd been there twice before, knew some of the families. The clinic was a single room in the community building exam table, supply cabinet, satellite phone. Basic but functional. First 2 days were normal. Ear infections, a kid with a cough, an elder whose blood pressure meds needed adjusting. Routine. Day 3, a man named William came in. Mid-40s, fisherman. He was holding his right forearm and there was blood soaking through a rag wrapped around it. Sarah unwrapped a deep laceration, 4 inches, right across the flexor tendons. Clean cut, like a blade. She cleaned it, stitched it, bandaged it, asked him what happened. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't read and said, "The boat engine." "You got cut on a boat engine?" "I will, next week." Sarah figured it was a language thing. English wasn't first language for most people in the village. She noted the injury, gave him care instructions, sent him home. Day 4, William walked into the clinic. No bandage, no wound. Sarah asked to see his arm. He held it out. Clean skin, no laceration, no stitches, no scar, nothing. She checked her notes. She'd written up the visit, documented the wound, used 7 stitches. She had the used suture kit in the sharps bin, but the man standing in front of her had never been cut. "William, I stitched your arm yesterday." He nodded. "And I'm here because next Tuesday my arm will catch on the outboard motor. I'll need stitches then." Sarah sat down. "You're saying the injury I treated yesterday hasn't happened yet?" "The injury happened to you yesterday. It happens to me next week. I came today so you'd know to have the suture kit ready." She thought he was confused. Maybe something neurological. She did a basic assessment. Cognition was fine. He was oriented, coherent, conversational. Not delusional, not impaired, just calmly telling her that she'd treated a wound from the future. She let it go, made a note, moved on. Day 5. A woman came in, Elena, early 30s, both hands wrapped in cloth. Sarah unwrapped them. Severe frostbite, blisters, discoloration, tissue damage 2nd degree at minimum. The kind of frostbite you get from prolonged exposure without gloves in extreme cold. Sarah treated her. It was a clear day, -5. Not warm, but not the kind of cold that does this. Not with the exposure time it would take. "Elena, when did this happen?" "The blizzard." "What blizzard?" "The one that comes next month. I'm outside for too long trying to find the dog." Sarah looked at Elena's hands. The frostbite was real. Clinically, diagnostically, physically real. Blistered skin. Fluid, tissue damage she could see and touch. From a blizzard that hadn't happened yet. She treated 3 more patients that week. A teenager with a broken wrist from a snow machine accident that wouldn't occur for 2 weeks. An elder with hypothermia symptoms from a night she hadn't yet spent locked out of her house. A child with a dog bite from a dog that was, at this point, still friendly. Every patient was calm. Every patient described the future event that would cause the injury as a certainty, Not a prediction, not a fear, but a fact they simply hadn't reached yet. And every injury was medically real. Present, treatable, just temporarily wrong. Sarah called her supervisor in Bethel on the satellite phone, described what was happening. Her supervisor listened, then said something Sarah replays constantly. "Which village are you in?" Sarah told her. Long pause. Then, "How many pre-wound patients?" Pre-wound. Her supervisor had a word for it, a clinical term that shouldn't exist. 5. That's within normal for that village. Treat them, document them, and don't I need you to hear me on this, don't try to prevent the future events. Don't warn them. Don't intervene. Why not? Because we tried that. In 2019, a nurse in another village saw a pre-wound patient with severe burns. She identified the future event, a stove fire, and helped the family fireproof their kitchen. The stove fire never happened. So it worked. The burns didn't heal. The patient still had third-degree burns from a fire that never occurred. And then the patient disappeared. Not died, disappeared. No body, no trace. The family has no memory of her. It's like she was removed from the timeline when her injury lost its cause. Sarah stayed for the full 2 weeks. She treated the pre-wound patients. She documented everything. She did not intervene. The following month, the blizzard came. Elena got frostbite on hands that had already healed from frostbite she'd gotten from this exact blizzard. William cut his arm on the outboard. The teenager wrecked his snow machine. Every injury happened exactly as described. Every patient came back to the clinic to be treated again for the same wound, in the same place, with the same severity. Sarah stitched William's arm a second time, in the same spot, with the same number of sutures. He looked at her while she worked and said, "See, you are ready." Sarah finished her rotation and flew out. She hasn't gone back to that village. Still travels different villages, different rotations. She says the pre-wound phenomenon is specific to certain communities. Not all of them. Her supervisor won't tell her which ones. Just sends her the assignment and lets her figure it out. She told me one last thing. The day she left, the health aide who ran the clinic between nurse rotations pulled her aside. An older woman, kind face. She held Sarah's hand and said, "Thank you for treating them. Most nurses panic, or they try to fix the future. The future doesn't like being fixed." Sarah asked what she meant by that. The woman looked past her, at the frozen river, at the white distance. The land shows us what's coming. It's not a warning, it's not a gift, it's practice. The land is practicing what it will do to us, and it wants us to be ready. Practice. That word again. The same word from episode 1. The ones who practice standing like people. The land practicing what it will do. I don't think that's a coincidence anymore. Story 3. The General Store. Frank and Marcy Eliason ran the only store in a town I'm going to call Ridgeline. Interior Alaska, road accessible but barely one highway in, same highway out, nearest other town about 90 miles. They'd been running the store for 22 years. Knew every family, knew every order. Could predict what the town needed before the town knew it needed it. The supply truck came on Tuesdays. Same driver, Gus, out of Fairbanks. Same route, same time, give or take weather. Frank would help unload. Marcy would check the invoice against the order, and by Wednesday morning everything was on shelves. First week of October 2023, the truck came with extra. Not a lot. Maybe 6 additional cases. canned food, dry goods, batteries, all properly invoiced, all addressed to the store. But Frank hadn't ordered them. He called the distributor. They confirmed the order, said it had come through their system, time-stamped, authorized, paid for. Frank checked his records. Nothing. He hadn't placed it. The invoice was dated January 14th, 2024, 3 months in the future. He showed Marcy. She assumed it was a system error, a date glitch, a misguided order. They stocked the extra items because restocking costs money and the goods were already paid for. Second Tuesday, same thing. Extra cases. Different items, winter gear this time, insulated gloves, hand warmers, emergency blankets. Invoiced, paid for. Dated February 2024. Third Tuesday, the extras were medical supplies. Bandages, antiseptic, splints, cold packs, dated March 2024. More than a general store would ever carry, the kind of supplies you'd see in an emergency staging area. Frank stopped calling the distributor. He and Marcy stocked the items in the back room, separate from regular inventory. By mid-November, they had a small warehouse of supplies that had been ordered by no one, paid for by no source they could trace, and dated months into a future that hadn't arrived. Then the new customers started. A woman came in the first week of November. Frank had never seen her. In a town of 300 people where he'd lived for 22 years, he knew every face. This face was new. She was polite, mid-40s, dressed for the weather. She bought canned soup, batteries, and a bag of rice. Paid cash. When Frank asked if she was visiting someone in town, she smiled and said, "I live just outside town. We moved in last month." There was no just outside town. Frank knew every property, every cabin, every homestead within 30 miles. Nobody had moved in. 3 more new faces that week, then 5 the following week. All polite, all saying they lived just outside town, all buying the items from the future-dated inventory, as if the supplies had been ordered for them specifically. Marcy started tracking the new customers, names, if they gave them, descriptions, frequency. By December, she had 23 new people on her list. 23 individuals who shopped at the store regularly, paid in cash, and lived in locations that didn't exist. She drove the roads. Every road, every spur, every trail within 30 miles. She found nothing. No new cabins, no construction, no signs of habitation. She asked the new customers directly, "Where do you live? Can I see it on a map?" One woman, calm, friendly, not evasive, pointed to a spot on the wall map in the store. Marcy looked. The spot was 3 miles northeast, in dense spruce forest. She'd driven past it 2 days ago. There was nothing there. She drove out there again. Nothing. Trees, snow, silence. She came back to the store. The woman was still shopping. Marcy watched her leave. The woman walked north on the highway, turned off onto a trail that Marcy knew led into the forest, and disappeared into the trees. Frank followed one of the new men once, on foot at a distance. The man walked the highway for a mile, turned off onto an unmarked trail, walked another half-mile, and stopped. Just stopped. In a clearing in the spruce. Stood there. Frank watched for 10 minutes. Then the man turned around and looked directly at him from 300 yards away through dense forest and waved. The same small-town wave. The same gesture. Frank went home. The future-dated supplies kept coming. The new customers kept buying them. By January, by the actual January, that matched the invoice date, the back room was almost empty. The supplies had been absorbed into a population that, by every measurable standard, did not exist. Then, Gus, the truck driver, stopped coming. Different driver in February. Frank asked the new driver about Gus. The driver said there was no Gus. Never had been. He'd been driving this route for 3 years. Frank checked his records. Every delivery receipt he'd signed with Gus's name, 22 years of them, was signed in his own handwriting. He'd never noticed because he'd never looked. Frank and Marcy still run the store. The new customers still come. The future-dated inventory still arrives. Frank says there are about 40 of them now. 40 people who live somewhere in the woods around Ridgeline, in houses that can't be found, buying supplies that were ordered before anyone knew they'd be needed. Marcy told me the worst part isn't the people. It's that the town has accepted them. The old residents, the real residents. The 300 people Frank has known for decades. They've started treating the new ones like neighbors, waving at them, chatting at the post office, inviting them to the Christmas potluck. When Marcy points out that these people appeared from nowhere and live in invisible houses, her neighbors look at her like she's the one being strange. They're just the new folks, her neighbors said. Every town gets new folks. Marcy checks the town's population sign on the highway every time she drives past it. It used to say 312. Last time she looked, it said 347. She didn't tell Frank. She doesn't think he'd notice. 3 stories in, and I need you to understand something. I don't pick these to scare you. I pick them because they scare me. And the ones that scare me most are the quiet ones. The ones where the world changes by inches and nobody notices, except the one person who's paying attention. This next one's like that. Story 4. The Dog Lot. Kim and her training partner Alexa ran a kennel of 22 sled dogs outside a town off the Denali Highway. Not competitive Iditarod dogs, working dogs, touring dogs, the kind that pull clients through the back country in winter. They trained on a network of trails in the surrounding forest, 50 miles of groomed track through spruce and birch. The dogs knew every trail. That was the point. A well-trained team runs the trail from memory. The led dog reads the path. The team follows. The musher just manages pace and commands. It's a partnership built on the dogs knowing exactly where they are. January 2024. Kim was running a 12-dog team on their standard 20-mile loop. Flat terrain, gentle curves, well marked. She'd run it maybe 200 times. At mile 9, the lead dog, a 7-year-old female named Rook, the smartest dog Kim had ever trained, stopped. Dead stop. Planted her feet and refused to move. The team stacked up behind her, 12 dogs, all standing still. Kim called, "Hike." Nothing. Called, "Let's go." Nothing. She walked up to Rook and looked at the trail ahead. It looked fine, groomed, packed, clear. She could see the next trail marker 50 yards ahead. Rook wouldn't look at the trail. She was staring at the tree line to the right, ears flat, body low. Not growling. Something worse silent. A dog that's scared growls. A dog that's recognizing a predator it can't fight goes silent. Kim hooked the team down, walked ahead alone. The trail was fine. The snow was fine. She walked all the way to the marker and back. Nothing wrong. She went back to the team. Rook still wouldn't move. Kim tried swapping led dogs, put her second lead, a male named Bucket, up front. Bucket took 3 steps past where Rook had stopped, and then he stopped too. Same posture, same silence, same refusal. She turned the team around and went home the long way. She told Alexa. Alexa ran a different team on the same trail the next day. Same thing, mile 9, full stop. They tried it with different team configurations. Solo dogs on a tow line. Puppies who'd never run the trail before. Every dog, independently, without seeing the others react, hit mile 9 and refused. The boundary was precise. Kim marked it with flagging tape. Every dog stopped within the same 10-foot section. They walked the section on foot. During the day, it looked like every other section of trail. Spruce trees, packed snow, groomed surface. Normal. Alexa suggested trail cameras. They set up 2 on the trail, 2 angled into the forest, all motion activated, all running day and night. The daytime footage was normal. Moose crossing, a fox, wind in the trees. The nighttime footage was not normal. The trail between the cameras was different at night. Not damaged, not obscured, different. The path curved where it should be straight. The trees were in different positions. The groomed surface was replaced by something ungroomed, older, like a trail that had been walked for centuries but never maintained. The snowpack was darker, and there were marks in it. Not animal tracks, not boot prints, geometric shapes, pressed into the snow in repeating patterns, circles, lines, angles, as if something was walking the trail and leaving mathematical impressions instead of footprints. Kim zoomed in on the footage. The shapes were precise, consistent, each one identical to the last, spaced at exact intervals. She counted there were 47 impressions visible in the camera frame, covering about 30 feet of trail. And they were fresh. Every night, new impressions, same patterns, same spacing, as if something walked that section of trail every night in the same direction, pressing the same shapes into the snow. During the day, the impressions were gone. The trail was normal, groomed, undisturbed. Kim pulled the cameras after 2 weeks. She'd seen enough. She rerouted the training trail to skip the section, added 4 miles to the loop. The dogs ran it without issue. Happy, energetic, normal. But she told me something about Rook that she can't explain. After the reroute, Rook was fine on the trail, perfect lead dog, same as always. But at night, in the kennel, Rook started facing northeast. Every night, standing in her house, facing the same direction, completely still, for hours. Kim checked a compass. Northeast was the direction of mile 9, and just once, Kim went out to check the dogs at 2 a.m. and found Rook standing outside her house, facing northeast, moving her feet. Not walking. Just lifting them, one at a time, in a slow, deliberate pattern, left, right, in a rhythm that Kim recognized. The same spacing as the geometric impressions in the snow. Kim picked Rook up and carried her inside. Rook didn't resist, didn't react. Her eyes were open, but she wasn't looking at anything Kim could see. In the morning, Rook was fine. Kim hasn't seen her do it again, but she doesn't check the dogs at 2 a.m. anymore. She says she's afraid of what she'd see if all 22 of them were doing it. Halfway point. If you're still here, you've heard 5 out of 10. I want to tell you it gets lighter from here. It doesn't. Story 5. The photographs. This one comes from a girl named Lacey. 17 when she told me this. She's 18 now. I debated including it because she's young, but she asked me to. She said she needs other people to see what she's seeing so she knows she's not losing her mind. Lacey's grandmother died in March 2024. 91 years old, lived in the same small town in the Matanuska Valley her entire life. Lacey was close with her. After the funeral, Lacey's mother asked her to help clean out the house. In the attic, cardboard boxes. Dozens of them, all labeled by decade. Inside, photographs. Hundreds of photographs. Family photos spanning from the early 1960s to the mid-2000s, when Grandma finally got a digital camera and stopped printing. Lacey spent 3 days going through them. She was looking for specific ones to keep at her grandparents' wedding, her mother as a child, her own baby photos. Normal stuff. On day 2, she noticed something. She was looking at a photo from 1974. Her grandmother and grandfather standing outside the house. Summer. Garden visible behind them. Normal, lovely photo. But in the background, maybe 50 feet behind them at the tree line, there was a figure. A person, standing still, slightly out of focus, but clearly human-shaped. Dark clothing, facing the camera. Lacey didn't think much of it. A neighbor, maybe. Someone walking past. But she noticed it in the next photo, too. Different day, the lighting was different. Her grandmother was wearing different clothes. Same figure, same distance, same posture, same spot at the tree line. Lacey started going through the boxes systematically. Every outdoor photograph, every year. The figure was in all of them, 1962 through 2003. Every single outdoor photograph taken at or near her grandmother's house. Same figure, same position relative to the camera, always about 50 feet back, always slightly out of focus, always at the edge of the frame, standing still, facing the camera. In a photo from 1968, the figure was behind her grandmother at a barbecue. In a photo from 1979, it was standing at the end of the driveway while her mother played in the yard. In a photo from 1991, it was visible through the kitchen window, standing in the backyard while the family ate Thanksgiving dinner inside. 41 years, hundreds of photographs, the same figure in every single one. Lacey brought the photos downstairs, spread them across the kitchen table, called her mother in. Her mother looked at the photos, looked at the figure, looked at Lacey, and her face closed. That's how Lacey described it. Not fear, not surprise. Her face closed, like a door shutting. We don't talk about the one in the pictures. Mom, it's in every photo. I know. For 40 years. I know, Lacey. We don't talk about it. Grandma didn't talk about it. We don't talk about it. Lacey pushed. Her mother walked out of the room. Wouldn't discuss it. Not that day. Not ever. The subject was sealed. Lacey went back to the attic. In the last box, 2000 to 2003, she found a note. Her grandmother's handwriting, folded into the bottom of the box under the last stack of photos. She's in yours too. Check. Lacey went home, pulled out her phone, scrolled through her camera roll. She'd had a phone since she was 13. 4 years of photos. She found an outdoor photo she'd taken last summer. Her and 2 friends at the lake, in the background, at the tree line, slightly out of focus. The figure. She checked another photo. There. Another. There. Every outdoor photo she'd ever taken in the Matanuska Valley. At her grandmother's house. At the lake. At the school. In parking lots. On the highway, always about 50 feet back, always at the edge of the frame, always facing the camera. Lacey did something her grandmother and her mother never did. She walked toward it. She went to her grandmother's house. It was empty, waiting for probate. She stood in the yard. She took a photo of the tree line. Checked it. The figure was there, 50 feet away, at the edge of the trees. She walked toward the tree line. Took another photo. The figure was still 50 feet away. She walked further. Took another. 50 feet. Always 50 feet, no matter how far she walked. The figure maintained exactly the same distance. She turned around and walked back to the house. Took a photo facing the tree line. The figure was 30 feet away. She hadn't moved toward it that time. She'd walked away. And it had gotten closer. Lacey left. She drove home. She hasn't been back to the house. She told me she still takes photos. She can't stop. She's 17. She lives on her phone. It's how her generation documents everything. And the figure is in every outdoor photo she takes. Every single one. Still at the edge. Still out of focus. Still facing the camera. But it's not 50 feet away anymore. She measured it against landmarks in her most recent photos. The figure is now about 30 feet from the camera, in every photo, consistently. It's been closing the distance at a rate she can calculate, about 2 feet per month. She asked me what happens when it reaches the camera. I told her I didn't know. She said, "My grandmother took photos for 40 years, and it stayed at 50 feet. I walked toward it once, and now it's moving. I broke something, didn't I?" I didn't answer. She didn't need me to. 5 minutes in my own head after that one, and then I can keep going. These stories sit in you. That's the thing nobody warns you about. You hear them and they take up space, and the space doesn't shrink. This next one's from the coast. Southeast Alaska. Ferry country. Story 6. The Ferry. The town of, I'll call it, Port Ellison, sits on a small island in southeast Alaska. No road access. Population about 400. They depend on the state ferry system for everything: food, fuel, building materials, people. The ferry comes once a week, docks for 4 hours, loads and unloads, and leaves. It is the town's lifeline. It's also the only way on or off the island unless you have a boat or a float plane. The harbor master was a man named Vince, 20 years on the job. He knew the ferry schedule the way he knew his own heartbeat, which day, which tide, which berth. The ferry arrived on Thursdays. On a Wednesday in November 2023, Vince got a call from a fisherman at the harbor. "The ferry's here. It's Wednesday." "I know. The ferry's here." Vince drove down. The ferry was there, sitting at the berth, ramp down, engines running, lights on. The right ferry, same name, same hull number, same paint scheme. He could read the registration on the bow. It was the state vessel he'd been receiving every Thursday for 20 years. But it was Wednesday, and nobody was on it. No crew on deck, no one in the wheelhouse. The ramp was down, but the car deck was empty. The engines were running on idle. Steady, normal, the familiar diesel hum that meant a vessel was operational and crewed. But no one was operating it. Vince radioed the ferry system dispatch in Juneau. Said the ferry had arrived early. Dispatch said that was impossible. The ferry was in Juneau. Currently docked. Currently being loaded for tomorrow's Thursday departure. Vince could check the AIS tracking if he didn't believe them. He checked. The AIS showed the ferry in Juneau. The thing sitting at his dock with the ramp down and the engines running was not on any tracking system. Vince stood on the dock for a long time. The fisherman stood with him. They both looked at the ferry, the thing that looked like the ferry, that sounded like the ferry, that had the ferry's name and number, but was not, according to the state of Alaska, the ferry. "Shall we go on?" the fisherman asked. "No," Vince said, but he wasn't sure why he said it so firmly. They watched for 2 hours. Nothing changed. The engine idled. The ramp stayed down. The lights stayed on. Nobody appeared. At hour 3, Vince went aboard. He told me he doesn't know why. He said his feet just went, like the decision was made somewhere below his brain. The car deck was empty and clean. No vehicles, no cargo, no tie-down marks on the deck. He climbed the stairs to the passenger deck. The passenger cabin was full, not of people, of things. Coats hung on every seat hook, bags under every seat, shoes on the floor, books open on tray tables, coffee cups in holders, some still warm, reading glasses, medications in small paper cups, children's drawings, a knitting project with the needles still in position. Every seat had belongings. Every seat was set up as if someone had been sitting there moments ago and simply left without taking anything, without finishing their coffee or their book or their knitting. Vince walked the aisle. The belongings were from different eras. A leather suitcase from what looked like the 1960s. A Walkman with headphones from the 80s. A BlackBerry phone. A modern iPhone in a pink case. Decades of passengers' possessions, all arranged on the same vessel, as if every person who had ever ridden this ferry had left something behind, and it had all accumulated here. He picked up a coat, checked the pockets. A boarding pass, dated 1987. A ferry ticket for a route that hadn't existed since the early 90s. He picked up the iPhone. It was on. Lock screen showed a date, November of next year. He put it down. He went to the wheelhouse, empty. The controls were set to idle. The radio was on but broadcasting dead air. No chart was plotted. No log was open. But on the captain's chair, there was a clipboard with a passenger manifest. Names, hundreds of names, handwritten in different styles, in different inks, spanning what looked like decades. And at the bottom, the most recent entry, 2 names, Vince's name and the fisherman's. Boarded. Today's date. The column marked destination was blank. Vince put the clipboard down. He walked off the ferry. He walked off the ramp. He walked past the fisherman without speaking. He went to his truck and sat there until his hands stopped shaking. By the time he looked back at the dock, the ferry was gone. Not departing gone. The berth was empty. The water was still. No wake, no engine sound, no vessel on the horizon. As if it had never been there. The real ferry arrived the next day. Thursday, on schedule, normal crew, normal cargo, normal crossing. Vince unloaded it like always. He never told the crew what he'd seen. He told the fishermen not to talk about it. The fishermen agreed. But Vince checked one thing. He called the ferry system and asked for historical records. Had any passengers ever gone missing on the route? Any incidents? Any unexplained disappearances? The records showed 17 passengers over 40 years who had boarded the ferry at one port and never arrived at the destination port. 17 people who were on the manifest at departure and not on the manifest at arrival. No bodies, no investigations. Just gone. Vince asked if anyone had looked into it. The clerk said, "The numbers are within normal statistical parameters for maritime transport. 17 people vanish from a ferry over 40 years, and it's within normal parameters." Vince doesn't go to the harbor on Wednesdays anymore. He takes Wednesdays off. His assistant covers. When his assistant asked why, Vince said, "Because if it comes again, I don't want to be the one standing on the dock." His assistant asked what it was. Vince said, "The early ferry, the one that's always been coming, the one that doesn't leave tracks." 4 left. Hold on. Story 7. The Aurora. The Noyuk family, Greg, Terry, and their 2 sons, David and Luke, were driving home from a basketball game in a town about 40 miles from their village. This was the Seward Peninsula, western Alaska, November. The road was gravel, the sky was clear, and it was dark the way only Alaska is dark total, oppressive, the kind of dark that your headlights cut into like a knife into water. The Aurora came up around 8 p.m. green, bright, a solid curtain across the northern sky. Normal. They saw it a dozen times a year. Greg pointed it out to the boys. David, 16, said it was cool. Luke, 13, was playing a game on his phone and didn't look up. 20 minutes from home, the Aurora changed. It stopped moving. Auroras don't stop. They shimmer, ripple, fold their charged particles hitting atmosphere, constantly in motion. But this one froze. The curtain of green light hung in the sky like a photograph. Like someone had paused it. Terry noticed first. "Greg, the lights aren't moving." He looked. She was right. The entire display horizon to horizon was static, locked. Then it descended. Not fell. Descended. Controlled. Steady. Like an elevator, the curtain of green light dropped toward the earth. Slowly. They could see it dropping below the ridge line, below the tree line, to the ground. Greg stopped the truck. They could see the light through the trees, a solid wall of green standing on the ground, maybe a mile to the north. It was bright enough to cast shadows, bright enough that the snow looked radioactive. "Drive," Terry said. Greg drove. The road curved north, toward the light. He didn't have a choice. It was the only road. They hit the edge of it at mile 32. 1 second, they were in darkness. The next, the world was green. The air was green. The light wasn't coming from above. It was in the air itself, like driving through luminous fog, and it was warm. The temperature inside the truck jumped. Not slowly immediately. The heater was running, but this wasn't heater warmth. This was summer warmth, July warmth. In November, in western Alaska, at -15. The radio turned on by itself. It had been off. Now it was on, and it was playing a sound, not static, not music. A voice, speaking a language that none of them recognized. Not Inupiaq, not Yupik, not English, not Russian. Something else. Something with cadences and rhythms that felt structured but alien. The voice was calm, measured, like a news broadcast in a language from nowhere. Luke looked up from his phone. His phone was dead screen black, wouldn't respond. He looked out the window at the green air and said, "Dad, I can hear them counting." "Hear who counting?" "The ones in the light. They're counting us." Greg drove faster. The green section of road lasted about 2 miles. Then they were through it back into darkness, back into cold, like punching through a membrane. The radio went silent. The temperature dropped. Luke's phone turned back on. Luke was asleep, not dozed off deeply, completely asleep. His eyes were closed, his breathing was even, and he would not wake up. Terry shook him, shouted his name. pinched him. Nothing. He was unconscious but stable, breathing normally, heart rate normal, just unreachable. They drove to the clinic in their village. The health aide checked Luke over. Vitals were fine, everything was fine, but he wouldn't wake up. He didn't wake up for 3 days. When he did, he sat up in bed, looked at his mother, and said, "I'm fine." And he was fine. Normal. Hungry. Wanted to know if his team won the basketball game. No memory of the light, no memory of the drive, no memory of sleeping for 72 hours. But the following week, he started drawing. Luke had never been an artist. Stick figures at best. Now he was drawing maps. Detailed, precise, 2-scale maps of places he'd never been. Topographic, with elevation markers, with rivers and roads and buildings. He drew them on whatever was available: notebook paper, napkins, the margins of textbooks. Terry collected them. Over 4 weeks, Luke produced 31 maps. She showed them to Greg. Neither of them recognized any of the locations. She scanned them and sent them to a friend in Anchorage who worked for the state geography office. The friend called her back the same day. Voice strange. "Where did you get these?" "My son drew them." "These are surveys, professional surveys. 3 of these match state geological survey maps that aren't publicly available. 2 of them are areas we haven't surveyed yet." "What do you mean, haven't surveyed yet?" "I mean no one has mapped these areas. They're in the Brooks Range. No roads, no access, no surveys. But your son's drawings match the satellite topography perfectly." Terry asked Luke where the maps came from. He shrugged. Said he just knew what they looked like remembering a place you've been, except he'd never been there. She asked him about the towns on some of the maps, towns he'd drawn with street grids and building footprints in places where no towns existed. "They're not there yet," Luke said. "What do you mean?" He looked at her with an expression she said didn't belong on a 13-year-old's face. Too calm, too certain. "They will be." Luke still draws maps. He's 14 now. The maps have gotten more detailed. Some of them include dates. Terry doesn't show them to anyone anymore. She keeps them in a lockbox in the closet. She told me she checked one of the dated maps. It showed a structure at a specific GPS coordinate, dated 8 months ago. She drove to the coordinate. It was an empty hillside. She went back 6 months later. A cell tower had been built on the exact spot. She doesn't check the maps anymore. Story 8. The Repeater. Dennis Cole ran a ham radio station out of his garage in a small town north of Wasilla. Hobby operator, been at it for 30 years. He was part of a local radio club. 6 guys, all retired or semi-retired, who met on air most evenings to chat and monitor bands. In Alaska, ham radio isn't just a hobby. When cell towers go down and satellites lose line of sight, ham operators are the communication backbone. These guys took it seriously. March 2024. Dennis was scanning bands late at night around 1 a.m., the quietest time, when propagation does strange things and you can sometimes pick up signals from the other side of the world. He landed on an unusual frequency, not a standard amateur band, not a commercial or military frequency he recognized, something in between. A man's voice, flat, monotone, reading numbers. Not unusual on its own numbers. Stations have existed since the Cold War. Espionage, coded messages, that kind of thing. But this voice wasn't reading random numbers. It was reading coordinates, GPS coordinates, latitude, Then longitude, one pair after another, no breaks, no identification, no call sign. Just coordinates in a steady, emotionless stream. Dennis wrote them down, 6 pairs before the signal faded. He plotted them on a map. They formed a line, starting from a point in the Bering Sea about 40 miles offshore and running inland southeast through the Alaska Peninsula, through Lake Clark, across the Susitna Valley, and ending at a point in the Talkeetna Mountains. The line passed through 4 small towns. Dennis mentioned it at the next radio club meeting. His friend Carl, another experienced operator, said he'd heard the same signal. Same frequency, same voice, same format, but different coordinates. They compared. Carl's coordinates formed a different line, starting from a point in the Chukchi Sea, running south-southeast through the Brooks Range, the Yukon Drainage, the Alaska Range. The 2 lines intersected at one point. Their town. Over the next week, all 6 club members tuned to the frequency. All 6 heard the voice. All 6 were given different coordinates. 6 lines, all originating from different points in the ocean or the Arctic, all running through different parts of Alaska, all intersecting at the same point, their town, their specific GPS coordinates, not the town center, not the post office, the coordinates of the building where they held their radio club meetings. Then the signal changed. The voice stopped reading coordinates. It started reading names. Dennis heard his own name first, then Carl's, then the other 4 members of the club, then names he recognized: his wife, his neighbor, the woman who ran the gas station. Then names he didn't recognize, but when he asked around town, other people did. The voice was reading the town's population, name by name, in an order that none of them could figure out. They recorded it, played it back. On the recording, the voice was different for each listener. Dennis heard the names in English. Carl, whose first language was German, heard them in German. A club member whose wife was Athabascan heard them in a language he didn't speak, but that his wife recognized as Atna. The same recording, different languages for different listeners. They contacted the FCC, filed a report about unauthorized broadcasting. The FCC said they detected nothing on that frequency. No signal, no transmission. Dennis played them the recording. The FCC analyst listened, then said something that made Dennis's stomach drop. "Sir, this recording is silent. There's no audio on this file." Dennis played it on his own equipment. The voice was there, clear as day, names one after another. But on any equipment outside the club, outside the town silence, dead air. The signal is still broadcasting. Every night, 1 a.m. The voice reads names. It's gotten past the town's human population now. It's reading other things. Street names, building names, land features, the name of the creek, the name of the ridge, the name of the lake. It's cataloging the town, everything in it, everything that has a name. Dennis asked me what I thought would happen when it finished. I told him I didn't know. He said, "It's going to finish soon. There aren't that many names left, and I keep wondering, what does a list become when it's complete?" I didn't have an answer for that either. Story 9. The Basement. Jim Rourke bought the only bar in a small town on the Kenai Peninsula. Old building, 1940s construction, wood frame, concrete foundation. The kind of place where the bar stools had grooves worn into them from 60 years of the same people sitting in the same spots. Jim and his wife Marie fixed it up. New taps, new lighting, same bar stools. They kept it local. The building had a basement. Concrete floor, concrete walls, low ceiling. Jim used it for storage kegs, cases, dry goods. It was exactly the size of the building's footprint, 32 feet by 24 feet. He knew because he'd measured it when they took over the lease. He measured everything. Jim was that kind of guy. April 2024. Jim went downstairs for a case of whiskey, and something felt wrong. Not dramatically wrong, subtly wrong, like the room was a half step bigger than it should be. He got the tape measure, 34 feet by 26 feet, 2 feet wider, 2 feet longer. The basement was larger than it had been when he'd measured it 6 months ago, larger than the building above it. He told Marie. She said he'd measured wrong the first time. He showed her his notes. He'd written it down, 32 by 24, in the notebook he kept behind the bar. She looked at the notebook, looked at the tape measure, measured it herself, 34 by 26. She measured the ground floor above, 32 by 24. The basement was 2 feet larger than the building in every direction. That's impossible, not unlikely impossible. The foundation can't be larger than the structure it supports. The walls above sit on the walls below. If the basement grows, the building has to grow with it. But the building hadn't changed. Jim put marks on the basement walls, tape marks, measured distances, checked them weekly. By May, the basement was 36 by 28. It was growing about an inch a day. By June, it was 40 by 32. The corners of the basement now extended well past the building's footprint. Jim was standing in parts of the basement that were underneath the parking lot, underneath the ground outside. The ceiling hadn't changed, same height, same beams, same electrical, but the floor and walls had expanded into space that shouldn't be there. He called a contractor. The contractor came down, looked around, measured, frowned. He couldn't explain it. The concrete was continuous, no seams, no joints, no patches. It wasn't that new sections had been added. The existing floor had simply gotten bigger, like the space itself was stretching. July. The basement was 50 by 40, nearly twice its original size, and in the new space, the space that hadn't existed 6 months ago, Jim found the first door. It was in the east wall, a standard interior door, wooden, with a knob, closed. It was in a section of wall that, according to every measurement, was underneath the hardware store next door. Jim didn't open it. August. 2 more doors. One in the north wall, one in the south. Same style, same knob. Closed. He could hear breathing behind the east door, not loud, not aggressive. Slow, steady breathing, the breathing of something asleep, or something waiting. He pressed his ear to the door, and the breathing paused just for a second, just a hitch, and then resumed, as if whatever was behind it had noticed him listening and decided not to react. Marie refused to go downstairs after that. Jim still went, he had to. The kegs were down there, but he made trips fast. Grab what he needed. Don't look at the doors. Don't listen. Get out. September. The basement was 60 by 50. The doors had multiplied 9 of them now, spaced irregularly around the walls, all closed, all with the same wooden construction and brass knobs. And all of them, when Jim walked past, emitted the faintest sounds. Not the same sounds. Different behind each door. One breathed, one hummed, one made a sound like pages turning. One made a sound like someone setting a table, quiet clinks and shifts, domestic and mundane. Jim told me he almost opened that one, the table setting one, because it sounded so normal, so human, like someone was just on the other side, living their life in a room that didn't exist, under a building that shouldn't have a basement this large, in a space that the laws of physics say cannot be there. He didn't open it, but he stood in front of it for a long time, listening, and he said the sounds arranged themselves as if responding to his presence. The clinking slowed. A chair scraped back. Footsteps, soft, careful, approached the door from the other side, and then a knock from inside. One knock, gentle. The kind of knock you use when you don't want to disturb someone, when you're just checking if they're home. Jim went upstairs. He hasn't been in the basement since. He hired a kid from town to do keg runs. The kid goes down, gets the kegs, comes up. Jim asked the kid if he noticed anything weird. "Like what?" the kid said. "Like doors." The kid looked at him blankly. "There's one door, the one at the top of the stairs." Jim went to the top of the basement stairs and looked down. He could see the doors, all 12 of them now. He could see the expanded space, the impossible dimensions, the concrete floor stretching into territory that belonged to other buildings, other foundations, other realities. The kid saw a normal basement, 32 by 24, one door. Jim is the only one who sees it. Marie doesn't go down, so she can't confirm or deny. The contractor hasn't been back. The kid sees nothing. Jim still runs the bar. He says the floor vibrates sometimes, a low tremor that the patrons don't notice, but that he feels through his shoes. And the vibration has a rhythm. Knock, 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 patient, gentle, just checking if he's home. Last one. You know whose this is. Story 10. The Return. It's been 4 months since episode 1 went out. 4 months since I told you about the woman in the Anchorage diner, the one who said I was a carrier. The one who said the stories dilute if I spread them and concentrate if I stop. I didn't stop, obviously. You're listening to this. I kept collecting, kept compiling, kept telling. And for a while, it worked. The hallway light at 3 a.m. continued, but it didn't get worse. The feeling of someone in the backyard stayed exactly where it was present, but manageable. Background radiation. Then I got the emails. Mark wrote first. Mark from Story 1, the fuel stop. He said the credit card charge from Coldwater, the one that never fell off, had multiplied. 12 charges now. Same amount, same merchant, $47.50, 12 times, all posted on different dates. His bank couldn't explain it, couldn't reverse them. The charges just appeared. Dana wrote next. Dana from Story 2, Harbor House. She said someone had bought her old house at auction again. She checked the buyer's name. It was her name, her full legal name. A person she is not, had bought a house she'd fled, using her identity, in a town she'll never return to. Megan emailed me about the bridge. Story 9. She and Suki moved away, remember? Sold the house. Left, but Megan said she started feeling the pop again, the chest pressure thing. Not on a bridge on the overpass she drives to work every day in Anchorage. The same pop, the same lingering disorientation. She stopped driving that overpass, took a different route. The pop moved to the new route. It followed her. Whatever the bridge was doing, it isn't bound to the bridge anymore. I was managing this, cataloguing it, keeping professional distance. Then I got the letter. Same handwriting as the first one. Same absence of return address. But this one wasn't postmarked from Anchorage. It was postmarked from my town. I opened it. You diluted it too well. You have many carriers now, but dilution is not elimination. The land can feel every person who has listened. It knows the shape of their attention. And attention, once given, cannot be taken back. There was a second page. You misunderstood what I told you. I said you were a vector. I said spreading the stories would distribute the land's focus. I didn't say it would reduce it. You haven't been diluting the immune response. You've been teaching it how to find more hosts. I put the letter down. I went to my window, the backyard, the place where I've felt someone standing for over a year, the someone I've refused to look at. I looked. There was no one there. The yard was empty. Snow, fence, the neighbor's roof beyond. Nothing. But the snow was wrong. There were impressions in it, not footprints. Geometric shapes pressed into the surface in repeating patterns. Circles and lines and angles. The same patterns Kim described from the trail cameras in Story 4, the dog lot story, the one I told you 20 minutes ago. A story I received after the first episode aired, from a person I'd never met before, with details that matched something in my own backyard. I went outside. The impressions were real. I could feel them under my boots, pressed deep, precise, deliberate. They covered the entire yard in a grid pattern, evenly spaced, mathematically regular. I followed them. They led to the fence. Through the fence, the impressions continued in the neighbor's yard. Same pattern, same spacing. I walked around the block, every yard, same impressions, the entire block, marked. I drove through town, stopped at random streets, got out and checked. The impressions were everywhere, every yard, every empty lot. Every patch of snow in every part of my town had been marked with the same geometric pattern, pressed into the surface by something that moved through the entire community in a single night and left its notation on every inch of ground. Nobody else had noticed. I asked. My neighbor was shoveling his driveway. The impressions were right there, under his shovel, and he didn't see them. Just like the kid in the bar can't see the doors. Just like Lacey's mother won't look at the photographs. I went home. I sat at my desk. The letter was still there. There was a part I hadn't read a third page, stuck to the second. The land doesn't hate you. I told you that. It responds mechanically, the way a body fights infection. But you've done something no previous carrier has done. You've given the infection a voice. You've let it speak in human language, in human stories, through human mouths. The land is listening to its own immune response, narrated back to it by the very organisms it's trying to reject. It's learning from you. The stories you tell aren't just stories anymore. They're instructions. Every time someone listens, the land receives a report on its own mechanisms. What worked? What didn't? What scared the hosts? What the hosts adapted to? You're providing feedback to the immune system. You're making it smarter. And you can't stop. Because if you stop, the concentrated attention will find you. But if you continue, you teach it more. This is not a dilemma. A dilemma has a choice. This is a function. You are functioning. I read that 3 times. Then I opened my laptop, opened a blank document, and started writing what you're hearing right now. I don't know if this is courage or compulsion. I don't know if I'm warning you or recruiting you. I don't know if there's a difference anymore, but I know this. The impressions in my yard are still there. They haven't faded. And last night, for the first time, they weren't just in the snow. They were on my floor, inside my house, pressed into the hardwood in the hallway where the light turns on at 3 a.m. I checked. The light was on, and the woman in the diner was right. The bulb wasn't lit. The light was coming from somewhere else. From underneath. From the geometric shapes pressed into my floor, glowing faintly, pulsing in a rhythm that matched my heartbeat exactly. The land isn't outside anymore. It's in the architecture, in the infrastructure, in the foundations of every building that's ever been built on ground that never agreed to hold it. And it's in your ears right now, in the story I just told you, in the attention you just gave it. I'm sorry. I'll keep going. Episode 3. More stories, more carriers, more feedback for something I can't see, can't fight, can't stop teaching. The only thing I can tell you, the only honest thing is this. If you feel something tonight, when the house is quiet, when the furnace kicks off and the silence gets heavy, if you feel a vibration in your floor, a hum in your walls, a presence in your yard that you can't see but can't deny, don't investigate. Don't look. But know this, you were warned, and you stayed, and staying is a kind of agreement. The land thanks you, again.